Welcome to Global Connections on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidell. Today we'll talk about unprecedented uncertainties in West Asia. That's a lot of territory. What are the implications for Europe and the US? Our guest for the show is Roopmati Kandekar, geopolitical analyst. Welcome to the show, Roopmati.
Aloha, Jay. Thank you for having me on your show. And what a topic you've got today, Jay. Current affairs that we have. It's a real hodgepodge.
Lots of troublesome events in West Asia, which covers a lot of territory. And they're not really getting enough attention in global media. The dots are not being connected. But when we look at it, we see revealing growing instabilities and uncertainties there, which will have adverse consequences, I am sure, for the countries involved and for the region in general, and for the US and Europe. So, Roopmati, what are we talking about? Let's define the geography.
Yeah, so Jay, let's start with this West Asia, which is now having these spots of conflict and craziness, if I may call it, that is going to affect our future events in a big, big way, Jay. And so they have spiraled out of control. And one of the main hitting headlines, and which unbelievable was the word that we could describe the headlines, was that a train was hijacked. Entire train with 400 passengers was hijacked by 33 militants of the Baluchistan Liberation Army in Pakistan. And as we all know, Jay, through history and time and again, and as India suffers, Pakistan has been the epicenter of terrorism. Any event which has terrorism in the world has always had a link or root which has emanated from Pakistan. Even Osama was killed in Pakistan. So the soil has a lot of seeds of terrorism. And today they were the ones at the receiving end. And, you know, the statements that came out were that they blamed Afghanistan and India for the terrorist attack which happened, the train hijacking. Now, this was absolutely absurd, and people were, on both sides, Afghanistan and India, refuted it completely, and they called it that the Baluchistan Liberation Group. There's an area in Pakistan. They are unsatisfied with the government. They want an independent area, and they want to be a Baluchistan independent state, and that's the struggle. And for that struggle, to highlight that struggle, they have hijacked an entire train, Jay. So we have this kind of thing. So Pakistan was at this, and they fumbled, and they are still like they don't know what to do about it, how to retaliate, how to get to this. So that's the point. Let's see what they do. They will bring it at the forums, but I don't think anything will be done about this, because they have just trying. Remember there was a scenario where they were trying to push back around 1 lakh Afghanis behind the border. They had a border skirmish with Afghanistan itself, and so Taliban is the one who is resisting these Pakistan moves on their border. And so Pakistan is struggling with this failing economy. Economics is not doing well. And soon there's going to be a US travel ban on the Pakistanis as a whole also. So they still continue to suffer, Jay. And so let's come down to Syria, Jay. And Ahmad al-Sharara has inherited a mess. We've seen it that after Assad went, it's like from the frying pan into the fire. We have used this term for Syria. He's a product of the ISIS, the Al-Qaeda. And so now today he sits in a suit, he speaks about governance. And as usual, Jay, our EU allies are the first ones to prop up and donate around 6 billion to help reconstruction of Syria. Now, Jay, 6 billion in the hands of these people brings around a lot of corruption. So EU has to learn to streamline the charity lines or their aid lines in such a way that they bring about not future disturbances, and not, it should be trickle down to the right sources. And EU always fails to do that. Jay, there was a mass killing of Alawites, that is the Greek Orthodox Church. Around 1,500 were killed. And there's a fear in the Christians that they would be next, because right now we have an Islamist inclined regime in place. And we have always spoken of how they move the religion itself has a political agenda, and it moves from a zone of waiting in the wings to domination to complete control. And after they eliminate the other faith, the non-believers, they get to fighting amongst themselves, like it's happening in Pakistan. The same community is fighting with each other. So, but till that time, whoever is a non-believer in their faith is against them, and that is what is happening in Syria. Jay, this mass persecution is something something out of the medieval times that we are facing, and there is a fear for life in general, Jay, because I don't think they have tolerance for they don't have religious tolerance, and that is going to be a big problem in the coming months. And we know Israel did not wait. They wanted to secure this side of the border, and we have another strike to secure a few more bases around in Syria so that we don't have future incursions, and this doesn't open up a new front, a formidable front for Israel. So they have taken precautionary moves, and they have moved, they have really secured this area very well, Jay. So that has happened in Syria, Jay. And now we come to the Houthi, Jay. So the Houthi are the rebels in Yemen. We have been facing a lot of problems with the traffic in the Red Sea. And Jay, Trump has taken upon himself to eliminate the Houthis. And now we are in the midst of such a fighting that the US warships were targeted by these Houthis. Now, if they are pirates, if they are rebels, how come they have such sophisticated technology to attack the US ships? They are being funded, the logistics are being provided by none other than Iran. And so today, US destroys the Iranian intelligence ship, which was supposed to be an iconic one, the Zagros. US destroys it because they are the ones who are providing intelligence and support to the Houthis. And today, Trump made a very thundering statement that any shot fired by the Houthis will be considered to be a shot fired by Iran. So he's taken the bull of Iran by its horns, and he's going for it, Jay. So it's, such events one after the other. It's a complete mess, and it's just waiting to explode into something much more bigger.
Oh, I have so many questions for you. Let's start with this explosion. If you have brush fires all around the Middle East, and you have conflict and war and attacks and assassinations and the like, and global news is not covering enough. We have to take this more seriously because of what you said. This could erupt into a regional war. These things could repeat and expand and connect. So my question is, what is the scenario if you have all these brush fires all over the Middle East and people are, attacking each other, societies are breaking down, European and American forces are involved. Iran is trying to foment unrest and terrorism. What's the scenario? How do you get to a regional war? What does it look like?
CJ, these points of conflict, or points of instability that are happening in this area, West Asia, generally it's an oil-rich zone, considered to have lots of pockets of prosperity, but the governments are such that they are theologically dominated, religiously inclined. And religiously inclined governments usually do not give priority to women. They they have the religious ideologies above everything else. So domestic development takes a big hit. It's prosperity in the hands of a few who are religiously more powerful. And so this creates those, powerhouses, Jay. And those powerhouses are not interested in development or more money, not like the bourgeoisie. They are more interested in propagating their religion. And that's where religious persecution and religious intolerance comes in. And they dominate and they make the others suffer. So when they make the others suffer, Jay, this is what happened with Israel. Gaza was given a place to thrive, but they wanted to see Israel suffer. So they come inside Israel on one day, on October 7th, and they have a terrorist attack. So these terror attacks are always with the aim of creating fear, with the aim of creating instability. And now when it's happening amongst themselves, they are in a fix. And Iran was the one who was the rogue nation who created this axis of resistance against Israel. And with the US coming in full force, Jay, this kind of domination by the global leader, as we say, is giving strength to this Israel, what do you say, resistance, or what is the wall of to the resistance that it faced. So when the Houthis, Hezbollah, all these Hamas were all together, imagine the pressure that Israel was facing. Pakistanis, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, all these people are antagonistic towards Israel. And to have these zones of instability thriving, Assad, all these, you need to eliminate these things. And this is going to be a phase of transition, if I may say, because this is going to clear up things in the West Asia. Whether the Syrian government, the new government, becomes more corrupt, becomes indulges in religious persecution further, makes it a failed state, and a failed state will implode. But a failed state will also mean a weak state. And that is what is necessary for stability in West Asia, ironically. Because when you have a strong state, when Iran was bankrupt, you had all this Hezbollah, Hamas, all these people in their rat holes, Jay. The moment Iran got money, it started financing these people, and they came on for this terrorist attack. So these states need to be weak or unstable, or imploding within or fighting within themselves to have a peaceful West Asian zone.
It strikes me that we ought to just take a look and see how many of the countries you've mentioned are democracies, representative government. And it just sounds like none of them are. And they all, have internal dissension. They all have instability, and instability leads to terrorism and civil war. And that always, at least in the Middle East, it always leaks out to other countries. They get in contention with their neighbors. So, the other thing I wanted to ask you is, okay, we talked about Pakistan, we talked about Syria, Yemen, Iran, and the Israel-Gaza Hamas situation. I think I got them all. I want to find the connecting dots. For example, in which of these countries, in which of these instabilities, uncertainty countries, is the US a player? Is Trump a player? Is, for example, somehow Trump involved in what's going on in Pakistan, and all the others? And I guess the question is, either he is actively involved, I want to know about that, or passively involved, where he could be helpful, but he isn't being helpful. So can we talk about external forces like the U.S., like Trump, like Putin, like Europe, that either escalate these uncertainties, these conflicts, or could resolve them somehow?
Pakistan is an internal matter. They have freedom struggle for Baluchistan area, so we leave that aside for the timing. But there's still a breeding ground for terrorists. They are the perpetuators of terrorism. They finance terrorism in a big, big way. So Pakistan remains engrossed with their own problems. But for Trump to be involved, Trump was the one who was trying to choke Iran financially when they were having the nuclear weapon. And when Biden came onto the scene, and the hostage release and the billion that was given, and plus the sanctions on Russia, what happened was that Iran started, bypassing the area, selling the oil through zones of no surveillance, means the black market. So they picked up a lot of money in the sanction times. And they, like you explained, that city in Tehran, the way it is, if you could, Jay.
Well, there was a video, a movie, if you will, made with cell phone footage that was leaked out of Iran a month or two ago and has surfaced on YouTube now. And it depicts Tehran as a very strange city. On the one hand, in one neighborhood, you have people who are very rich, who drive fancy European cars, who live in fabulous houses, who don't wear veils at all, and who spend a lot of time in discos and fancy restaurants. They're rich and they're the power group. In the other parts, most of the rest of Tehran, they're poor. They have electricity 1 hour a day. They don't have jobs. They don't have any financial security at all, and nor do they have personal security. And of course, Iran is a repressive state, and the repression falls on the poor people. The rich people are doing the repression, according to this film. So it was a shockaroo in the sense that we know that Iran has troubles. The sanctions have been problematic, but they see themselves as a rogue state. They see themselves as enhancing and funding and supporting terrorism, and the reasons are unclear, except possibly religion. We'll talk about that. But to answer your question, Tehran is really not working very well these days, and ultimately it's going to fall down the side. It's going to devolve because of these differentiations.
So, Jay, this kind of mismatch in every aspect of society in Iran, and so the religious domination that happens over there, the suppression of the domestic population, the jingoism that happens on television to show that their religion is prime and everything. So all this and their support to Hezbollah, Hamas was never a secret. It was open, and their leader Khomeini has always called for attack on Israel, to eliminate Israel from the map, to create nuclear weapons to destroy Israel. So their aim has just been focused on Israel. Make money, destroy Israel. Make finance terrorist groups to destroy Israel. Every means, the end was always to destroy Israel. So their maneuvers, Jay, have always been focused on Israel. And so when you have the US today coming in and choking the Houthis, why do you have a Iranian intelligence ship coming into the waters? With what logistics does Houthi attack a US warship? US warships as such, when the US warship enters waters, even countries, sovereign countries get a little bit wary and they step back. But when you have the Houthis attacking, the kind of motivation that they have, the suicide bomber motivation, go, I will be there behind you. You go and destroy yourself, but attack the enemy. That kind of attitude that is going on, Jay, this is what is bringing the Houthis on a head-on confrontation. And Yemen, at the capital Sana'a, so many 500 people have died. So all these things, Jay, you're having the US come in on important issues since a long time. They've always come up for Israel, but now it has come to the forefront because the situation has become such. Today, Israel is in an existential crisis. Whether it would have been Trump or anybody else at the helm of things in the US would have had to do the same things. Trump is going a notch, a craziness, but they would have had to bring about these zones of, to deal with these zones of instability would have been the priority of the government, because it's gone to such an stage. If tomorrow Iran gets a nuclear weapon, it's done for Israel. So we are at that stage of urgency, Jay.
I just wonder, there's some threads here we should cover. Number one is, it just seems to me, I'd be very interested in your opinion, is that since Trump was inaugurated, they seem to have gotten worse. There's more conflict, more reports of violence and civil strife. We thought Syria was going to be okay. It's not okay. We thought there would be a truce of some kind in Israel. there isn't. We thought that the Yemenis and the Houthis, would back off, but they haven't. They're more aggressive now than they were before. And they seem to have more weapons, missiles and intelligence ships and the like, from Iran or otherwise. And so what I get, and maybe it's just as an observer here, but what I get is that this is getting worse. Do you agree?
Absolutely, Jay. Absolutely, it's getting worse because these people are not going to give up. Like we always say, that they go to the point of their own destruction. They will never stop till they are destroyed completely. And always we have this barrier of human rights, of consideration of human, cessation of violence, all these things. So we stop at a point, but they continue to the point that they can be destroyed. So we are asymmetrical battle is what your favorite word, that we are on that platform. And so that creates a big problem for us, Jay, because they're very united in their activity, Jay. And we are not that united. When the US is going in alone, you don't have Europe supporting. How do you expect Syria to have a stable government when you give an Al-Qaeda and an ISIS recruit the reins of a government? You have to have a sane person at the table. The way he reads out, he talks about knowledge being power and bringing up knowledge. These are the people who have destroyed libraries, or killed professors, or what do they know about knowledge? They have attacked politicians, they have plundered money, they don't have any morale, and they speak of morals, and they speak about all these utopian things which don't make any sense. It's a Jekyll and Hyde kind of system thing that's going on, and he cannot make Syria a thriving democratic country. It's the truth. It's going to be a failed state, and how fast it's going to fail is the story. And it's very funny, in this failing state, you have just the EU pumping money for no rhyme or reason. Wait, let him stabilize. If this recruit gets, Ahmed al-Shara gets 6 billion in his hands, where is it going to go, Jay? It's not going to go for roads and bridges. It's going to go for other things.
Let me go to some of the things that occur to me here. Number one is religion. And a clash of civilizations. You remember Samuel Huntington with his theory about clashing civilizations in the Middle East, and I suppose in all of West Asia. So the question is, what's the common denominator here about religion? We know that Pakistan is Islamic State, effectively. Pakistan is highly anti-Semitic. It's also anti-Israel. I don't know about the Baluchistanians, but they're certainly violent. And this train thing with the hostages, it seems like a Me Too event. The Hamas takes hostages. Why don't we take hostages? And we don't know about the 400 people that's still hostage. How long is that going to last? I mean, it certainly did get some notoriety about it. And what is Narendra Modi doing about this? This is his neighbor. If I were Narendra Modi, or 1.4 billion Indians, I would be a little concerned about this kind of violence right on my doorstep. So I think he's trying to prevent the rebel factions from getting resources from overseas, weapons or support, but I don't know how successful he is. So what's the relationship between India and this Islamic Pakistan?
Yeah, Jay. So that was the Operation Green Bolan, in which it was a 36-hour standoff, and they rescued the 366 passengers. But Jay, Pakistan immediately went. These Baluchs are tribal people, Jay, and that is an area of Pakistan which is completely neglected by this government. Pakistan government concentrates on few cities like Karachi, Lahore. They concentrate on that, and the rest is like something like the model of China. A few cities are developed, the rest is rural and undeveloped. So the same kind of model applies in Pakistan. A few cities are very well developed, And these tribal Baluch, they're unsatisfied with the government. They don't get any assistance from the government. Out of sheer dissatisfaction, they want an independent territory of their own. They're close to the border of Afghanistan and they want an independent country. So that is their struggle going on. And immediately what happened was Pakistan blamed India and Afghanistan for this terrorist attack. Now, earlier it would sound like a tit for tat, but the government has not even bothered to answer this because Pakistan itself is the epicenter of terrorism, and they had terror camps for training militants. Al Qaeda had one of the biggest bases in Pakistan. You have so many recruits of Al Qaeda and ISIS well settled in Pakistan. So to point fingers at others when the house itself is full of terrorists is a lost case for them any which ways.
This reminds me of Barbara Tuchman and the Guns of August, and how Europe was all primed for a war in 1914, and they all had armies. They all had cadres of officers and men and women, I suppose, who were ready to fight. But they had to have an excuse. They had to have something. So the assassination of the Duke in Serbia was enough to get it started. And I'm thinking, if one part of this region that you're talking about goes violent, it's a kind of a message to another part. It's a message saying, hey, violence is good. And if they're doing it, we can do it. We have, as in Pakistan, we have the ability to rebel and revolt and, take trains and the like. Why don't we just do that now? It's like license. So if one part of this area is going off the side and becoming violent, another part says, let's do that too. Do you think there's a process like that where, it's a Me Too thing and that it spreads like a virus?
Yeah, Jay, this was very much likely to be the scenario. But you have a huge chunk known as Saudi Arabia, which is focusing on economic development rather than, getting into this, playing the mediator for the US. So they have taken a more kind of a liberal stance out of they have shifted a little bit from religion, trying to show themselves more liberal, the kingdom is trying to show themselves to be more modern. And they are not falling in between all these things, not coming to help. Otherwise, we would have had a very strong Saudi voice supporting all these people, Jay, because they are Khashoggi in a plastic bag kind of a thing. So they are that kind of ruthless mental mindsets. So, but still, they're distancing themselves from all these places. You have the UAE, which is the kingdoms, and they thrive on economics. They don't want to get into this. So what happens? This kind of zone, which would have been a whole block, is now limited to being pockets of instability. So the US fighting the Houthis with the warship, or Pakistan being the train hijacking, or Israel fighting Syria having a problem. So it's just these pockets. It's not a whole zone now, mainly because of Saudi Arabia and UAE and all these places trying to keep their economic sense on a priority rather than religion.
Very complicated. And, it's always been complicated. I shouldn't say always, but in the last few years, it's been complicated. Now Trump arrives and Trump alienates Europe. And so in the past, Roopmati, the United States may have called on Europe to join it as an ally and to create a peace in any country that is at war in this area, West Asia, and the Middle East. But you know what? The Europeans are not going to be allies to Trump. They're not going to send troops. They're not going to do anything for him. He's alienated them. So whatever a Western power is doing in the Middle East, in West Asia, it's Trump alone. He represents the West. And of course, we know that he's not very good at strategy. He's not very good at morality. He's not very good at fixing what's broken. It's much easier to start a conflict than to make a peace. And he came in saying he was going to fix the Israeli fight with Hamas, and he hasn't done that. And with Hezbollah, he hasn't really done that. It's still a cauldron of violence and violent prospect. So I'm just wondering where this all is going, because I don't think that Trump is helping. I think his threats on Iran, he tried to get Iran to enter into peace negotiations, shall I say, nuclear discussions again. And they said, no, we don't like you. We're not going to do that. And, it's understandable because he's so mean and making threats. And now he's going after their proxy in Yemen. I don't think see if you agree with me, I don't think what he has done so far has been helpful. And I also don't think there's anyone else in the room that's going to come and help, including Vladimir Putin, who, doesn't have the resources to come and support Syria, or at least one faction in Syria, as he did before. They're all hands off. Saudi is hands off. Europe is hands off. Russia, to a large extent, is hands off. I don't know where China is. China's probably not much involved. And the U.S. is involved in fits and starts, in irrational moves and its own uncertainty. In fact, if the U.S. comes and acts in an uncertain and, aggravating, exacerbating kind of way, that makes it worse, doesn't it? So what we have is, it reverts to the default. And the default is violence and corruption and failed states. That's what we have. And I find it very interesting you point out about Saudi and some of the other Arab states, hands off. They don't want to be involved because they see what could happen.
Yeah, Jay, you're so point on about this, because loose ends now. Everywhere there are loose ends. Nothing is going to happen. It's all going to be a mess for sure. And Jay, the Secretary General's deputy spokesperson, Farhan Haq, he says that the Secretary General calls for full freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, and they reiterate the concern for multiple airstrikes by the US, and they want a cessation of these military strikes, and show the calls for them to have utmost resistance. So when you have an intergovernmental body which is defunct, you have something like the US who will take control. And when you have at the US the head, Trump, who wants to do everything at the same time, you're going to have this kind of instability. And this zone, Jay, has always been unstable. But Jay, one point that happens from this zone is that when the 1 million Palestinian refugees entered Germany, you had a culturally incompatible mass coming into Germany. Europe is facing it's on the brink of such a crisis, Jay, that we'll know in a few years that this immigration is not going to be controlled. It's going to be domination a few years. Just Google out who is the head of the education system in Britain, or the mayor of Britain. Everything has changed. The Englishness or the Germanness or the French flavor from France is gone. It's not supposed to be like that. So this community has got onslaught, if I may say, of problem on Europe, and they're going to have to take care of this rather than trying to pump in money where it's not needed. So the Syrian pledge of $6 billion is unnecessary. They have used the US for security, Jay, in such a big way that they had this kind of a zone of relaxation while the US would sponsor everything. Now, at this moment, you find out that the US does not need if they want to act. We don't have a person who can, really implement things very, successfully. But if this was to be a successful operation, Jay, just imagine getting rid of the Houthis, getting rid of the axis of resistance, protecting Israel. These are very nice things that are happening, but we don't know how to implement them because we have kind of a zone of a person who's trying to do too many things at one time, or nothingness is coming out of this. But on the verge or on the brink. They are very good idealistic things which stormed the authority of the US on the international geopolitical system. So we need this, and Europe has been a non-entity due to its indecisiveness, its inclination to remain in the colonial past. They still think they are superpowers. They are not. They are not in the top 10. Not in the top 5. You have other countries. They have a population which is totally incompatible with their civilizational identity, Jay. And they are going to face a problem because it's a small zone and Russia breathing down its neck all the time.
If you have all this violence and decline in these countries we've been talking about, if they become failed states, some of them are already failed states, in my opinion, that talks about migration. Where are they going to go? They can't stay there. They can't eat, feed their families. They can't have any quality of life. So what do? They head to Europe. And some countries in Europe may take them, others will not. It'll be a contention. It'll be, a big public issue, but that's where they're going to go. And then what you have to realize is that Europe is bound at the hip with this area. They can't escape. Europe is going to be affected by what happens in the countries we have been discussing, and I think that's very interesting. The second point I want to mention from what you say is we have conflict in Ukraine, and we have Trump's efforts, which could be successful, but not right away, and probably not in a way we will like, to make a peace there with Putin, his friend, his buddy. And the question is, assuming he either makes a peace or doesn't make a peace, how does that affect the strife in West Asia? In other words, if he makes a peace, everybody then turns to West Asia and say, oh, we should do that in West Asia. Or if he doesn't make a peace, then everybody says, let's have more strife because it's catching like a virus. What do you see a connection at all between Trump's efforts and Putin's efforts, to the extent that he's really making any efforts? I think for him it's all false flag. But assuming there's a peace, how does that affect what we've been talking about in West Asia?
If there's a peace deal in Ukraine, which is now going to be a never-ending process, it's never going to happen, and it's just going to stay on. And they're going to have bilaterals between Trump and Putin. They're going to enjoy each other's company, but nothing is going to happen of Ukraine. And that is going to continue forever because they have already spoken of how they have to cede territories to the US, to Russia. They have to give up on this. They have to take back. They have no place in NATO. So all the aspirations of Ukraine are being crushed. And Zelensky has said that the sovereignty of Ukraine will not be compromised. Only that level he's come down to his basic need now. So, Jay, West Asia, this instability, what happens is, apart from immigration, what happens is pockets of dissatisfaction that stay. And this kind of, they are potential zones of, terrorism. The seeds of, they have this mental toning that happens that they want to destroy now. And then you have this kind of those people who will come into our developed open societies and try to harm those people who are living a normal life across borders, across. So this travel ban that he has put forth, that is the mind of people who are his advisors. Because once this thing starts getting over, you're going to have really angry people coming across the shore. So this travel ban is not, it's a consequence of what will protect America next time. You need more now border security checks. You need the vetting of these people who are coming from these zones of instability. They're going to be, really angry people, and that's going to hurt American interests. We know that Atta, he came into a driving school and he said, I want to learn driving fast. They said, oh, in that much time, we can only teach you how to take off. He said, that's all I need. So nobody suspected that he would take it into the towers. So those kind of people would not be welcome, but they will come. They will penetrate into the countries, and that's where we have to have extra vigilance, extra tolerance, and extra love for the country. Jay. This patriotism or nationalism has to be very personal, and you have to have for your country rather than these. Compassion takes a backseat because we have compassion for the superficial side. In today's world, Jay, people are superficially very sweet, but in their heart they have intentions to harm you. So you have to be vigilant. The world is a jungle kind of thing when our parents told us when we were kids. That comes into play nowadays. So nobody can be trusted. That becomes the state because these are people who will uh, they will be perpetual propagators of terrorism.
The Houthis have as much said that we're going to get even with you.
Yes.
And of course, Iran will want to do that. And I don't know what's going to happen out of Syria. But, you're right. You're absolutely right. 9/11 is again possible. It's always been possible. But now it seems that the prospects are more threatening. So I want to ask you one other thing. By the way, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance.
I love that.
Thomas Jefferson. Yeah. So one last question is that it's hard for me to ask you this question. I used to ask you this question because I felt that there would be a place for you theoretically among, say, the Biden administration to be Secretary of State. The question is more complicated now in the Trump administration to be Secretary of State. So I have to sort of define the scope of your role. Your role would be as Secretary of State in a country which tries to manipulate the Secretary of State. But so let's just say that you'd be Secretary of State in a country that had its head screwed on right. Okay, forgetting about which administration is running things. So if you were the Secretary of State, given what we have discussed in West Asia and Middle East, what would you do to put a cap on this?
Jay, this first things first, always I told you, protect that only single democratic country that we have in West Asia, in the Middle East, like you call it. It's only Israel that has to be protected in this because these other countries, the rest of the countries that we discussed, name all of them in a line alphabetically or whatever, all of them just have an intention to destroy Israel. And this aim is with which they exist. And that is the only thing that you have to focus on. When you focus on protecting Israel, then the Houthis come up as the troublemakers. Then Iran comes as the propagator of the axis of resistance. After you focus on controlling the terror activities on Israel, you focus on Hezbollah, Hamas, the funding sources, you focus on so many things. There's an entire network that you have to destroy. So it's just that one seed that we have to take care of is how to protect what is harming Israel. That's the only thing that gives root to this entire instability in West Asia. All of them.
Wow. Well, that was an armful, I think, today. But I think we'll have to leave it there, Roopmati. Thank you so much, Roopmati Kandekar, a geopolitical analyst. I'm Jay Fidell, host of Global Connections, and we've been discussing unprecedented uncertainties in West Asia and beyond. Thanks to our viewers for watching. We'll see you again soon for the next one. Aloha.
Aloha, Jay. Thank you so much.